Welcome to this week's episode of the Lido Loop. I am your host, Jack McCraw. With me, as always, my good friend, Jesse Barboza. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Jack?
Doing all right. A little under weather with these allergies, but, we're going to make it through. Like they say, the show must go on. And tell us, Jesse, what's on the show today?
So in the cruise news today, Elliott Management Group does a shakedown of NCL. Carnival Dream comes out of dry dock. And there's a fake overboard incident on a Royal Caribbean ship.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about that fake overboard incident. And on the theme park side of things, Disney has both closed a park and opened a brand new park in Paris. We'll get more into that. Disneyland closes a beloved ride, and Disney World opens a beloved ride. That, and we're talking about that darn chaperone policy at Six Flags again. Plus, it'll be part 2 of our series, Let's Go on a Cruise. All that and much more on this week's episode of the Lido Loop. So kicking off the show today, we're going to talk about what's become a fan favorite topic on the show, Norwegian Cruise Line. Jesse, doesn't it seem like every week NCL is in some kind of news, good or bad?
Yeah, it definitely seems like that. I think this week, though, this might be good news. I know recently, the past couple episodes, we did talk about Elliott Management Group taking a 10% share in stock of NCL, and they have now shown what they plan on doing. The first thing they did is get 5 new directors, which included 4 of them was proposed by Elliott Management Group. They actually do support the new CEO, John Chisdy, leadership. And they said the main focus is Elliott's going to be pushing for better guest experience and improved financial results, which I definitely can see them doing that. The big thing that I like that they just started doing is now allowing the drink package to go on their private destinations.
Yeah, because even cruises like Carnival don't allow that, especially when we went to Celebration Key or really any other ports. So that's a good step in the right direction for someone that wants a better guest experience, is letting them utilize that drink package, not just on the ship, but in their ports as well.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of talking about it off air, but why should you pay for a drink package like on a 3-day cruise, say your 3-day cruise, you're already paying for that day on the cruise ship, and when you get off the island, you got to pay for another one to the exact same company. It doesn't make sense. I understand if it's a different company you're paying for, but no, it's going to the exact same company.
Yeah, like if you get off in Cozumel or something and you go to a restaurant that's not owned by any of the ports, or any of the ships, okay, you're paying a different restaurant and giving them business. But yes, if, like you said, if NCL owns things and doesn't allow you to use that drink package, that's just not fair. And I think that this could be a game changer in the industry, because I think more cruises realize that people don't want to be nickeled and dimed like this, and they can increase their guest experience by letting them use this drink package, not just on the ship, but also at their ports as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with it. With all the new decisions NCL doing, we'll look forward to seeing, and hopefully we book a cruise with them soon.
Yeah, just, don't charge us $45 for a show. Then we'll really consider it. Otherwise, I'll stick with Carnival and their free shows. But speaking of Carnival, the Carnival Dream has come out of the dry dock. Jesse, want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so since our home port is here in Texas, which is Galveston, we definitely like to talk about the ships that are related to this home port. And one of them is Carnival Dream, which just got back from a 16-day dry dock. And some of the things that they did add were the new Dream Studio, the photo studio. It's kind of like professional photography space for cruise and portraits and sessions. They also added a Carnival Adventure store. It's pretty much a dedicated spot for onboard to book shore excursions a lot more easier. They did revamp the casino. They have a new layout, added a host station for better service, and they did a retail area refresh. The shops updated and monetized, including jewelry and onboard stores. And of course, they definitely did some like minor maintenance stuff like updating carpet. They did maintenance and system upgrade, and they did some minor improvements to public spaces and the guest flow. But one thing I did when talking to people that they did not update is anything to do with the staterooms, which I think that in the staterooms they definitely should have updated, because that ship was built in 2008, so they have no USB outlets in the whole ship, which is definitely something that they should have added during the dry dock. And they actually added no new attractions. And me personally, since their sister ship is the Carnival Breeze, I felt like they should have the same stuff. And Carnival Breeze does have a ropes course, so I think they should have tried to add that to the Carnival Dream. So to me, it seems like they just added stuff to make more money instead of thinking about the guest experience. I don't know, what do you think?
They prioritize profit over the guest experience. So it seems like everything here is cosmetic more than anything. You know, like you said, adding the photo booth, adding the shore excursions. The one I kind of like is the casino, because you and I have been on multiple Carnival ships, and the casino can be really small depending on which ship you go on. So any sort of expansion is good news for that. It is kind of in a confined space where there isn't a whole lot of room to expand. Maybe they took a little bit out of a sports bar or something, but I agree with you. If you're going to take a ship and take it off its course and then try to, make it better, I think adding another slide or ropes course would be a lot of fun. I think even a roller coaster would, but I know those are usually safe for the bigger ships, so I understand that. It does really feel like they didn't prioritize the quote guest experience here. They just kind of looking after themselves and seeing how they can maximize their profits more efficiently.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So, I definitely think that they can hopefully do another smaller dry dock. And I've actually have heard people say that while they were on board, they were still fixing stuff. So that 16 days, I guess, wasn't enough. Another thing that they did do, I forgot to mention, is they did repaint the hull, which is, they kind of do that almost every sailing. They paint over the rust and all that. If you ever go to a port ahead of time, you'll see them constantly cleaning and trying to maintain the hull to make it look nice.
I was going to say, how many layers of paint do you think are on cruise ships?
Oh, man, there's got to be 50 at least before each dry dock.
Yeah, 16 days doesn't really seem like a whole lot of time to, enhance the ship and, add more to it, if that makes sense. Because I get a ship is you can't really expand, make the ship bigger. You almost have to start from scratch and build a whole new ship. But these little improvements, I guess, could be good in the long run, but I don't think guests are really going to notice a big difference next time they go on the Carnival Dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then our final cruise topic is there was a fake overboard incident on a Royal Caribbean ship. I've never heard this happen on any kind of cruise, Jesse. Can you go ahead and break down a little bit as to what happened and what consequences these people could be facing?
Yeah, so this incident actually happened on Oasis of the Seas during a spring break Caribbean cruise. It was March 20th, 2026 sailing. So apparently a group of teenagers, they falsely reported that someone had gone overboard. In some accounts, they told a family member, which looks like a grandmother, that a girl had fallen over the ship, which triggered the alarm. I'm sure the grandmother went and told someone for Royal Caribbean. What started as a joke, it immediately escalated into a full emergency. So the cruise ships, they treat it like a man overboard, which is like the highest level. The captain issued emergency code Oscar, Oscar, Oscar. The ship turned around like mid-route near Cuba. The cruise launched a full search and rescue response. They even threw life rings. The U.S. Coast Guard was alerted. This actually lasted 90 minutes before they found out that it was just a prank when they found the girl that they said was overboard. I don't know. What do you think, Jack? What do you think about this story?
It's the boy who cried wolf, but in cruise form. Kids are dumb, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show as well. But, I mean, what point does a prank no longer become funny? Because I think this one could have been stopped after the grandmother went and told someone, hey, there's a lady overboard. Now, maybe the kids didn't know. They just told grandma, and they just thought it was funny. So grandma did tell them, and then that's what happened. So the kids were unaware that that was told. But poor grandma is just trying to do the right thing and report someone overboard. I can't imagine what's going to happen to these kids. I mean, have you seen any of the consequences as to what happens when you do a false overboard?
So, I mean, I haven't heard for this case specifically, but they did say stuff like there could be up to $250,000 fines, prison time. I think they said, 6 years, up to 6 years. They could also be paying back the search and rescue cost. I'm sure, which I'm sure they did this, Royal Caribbean did. I'm sure they gave them a lifetime ban for the parents. Let's just say I would hate to be those kids right now. I'm sure they are grounded for life until they're 18.
Not to mention they probably have a criminal record at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they could have definitely got criminal record. I'm sure the parents are paying for something. I haven't heard anything specifically like what they are, but I'm sure it's not good.
Yeah, like I said, kids, if you think a prank is funny, let it go a certain amount, but a man overboard is definitely not something to joke about because the Coast Guard was right on it, and I imagine everyone was upset. The cruise got halted. Coast Guard had to leave their job to find this person that's not there, and the whole ship was disrupted, all because some kids wanted to have fun. Yeah, good luck in court, kids. Y'all are going to need it.
So, Jack, in theme park news now, Disney Studios in Paris closed down. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So this has been a long time coming for the Disney Studios park in Paris. It opened in 2002 as the Hollywood Studios version of Disneyland Paris's second gate. Kind of like how in Florida we have Hollywood Studios with Galaxy's Edge, Toy Story Land, all that stuff. It did not do well at first because there were not a whole lot of rides. It felt dated already in 2002, and everything was a look behind the movie scenes that was, a popular thing in the 80s and 90s. So this was during the Eisner years at Disney, and this kind of led to Eisner eventually being replaced by Bob Iger, but that's a story for another day. So Disney Studios Park in Paris has been retransformed now into Disney Adventure World, which will feature new intellectual properties going into the park. So it's like a second Disneyland, but with more themed areas. There's one to Tangled. There's already a Frozen land that's open, and there's a brand new Lion King land opening as well. So Jesse, would these new openings and new lands ever make you want to go to Paris to go to Disney?
Not me personally. I mean, I'm really not super interested in going to Disney here in the States, so I definitely would not go to Paris.
No, I totally understand that, but it's definitely something that Disney wants to do with their parks going forward. Is gone are the days of rides themed to mountains. Everything has to have an intellectual property. So the most recent rides, Toy Story, like we mentioned earlier, and Star Wars, big properties Disney put in Hollywood Studios. The park's never been more popular. Rock and Roller Coaster, as we talked about, is getting rethemed to the Muppets, not Aerosmith anymore. They're opening a Monsters, Inc. land in Hollywood Studios as well, and Cars Land is opening in Magic Kingdom in the near future. So everything's going to have a Disney brand into the new parks, which I understand. That's what kids came to see. They want to see Lightning McQueen. They want to see Chewbacca. They want to see all their favorite Disney characters. And, kind of going forward with a little bit more Disney news, there's one major ride closing for a refurbishment at Disneyland, and that's Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, that's one of my favorite rides to ride at Disney parks. Jesse, I kind of want to ask you, as a theme park enthusiast, if a ride that you really liked was not going to be open and you knew it, would that affect your experience at a theme park or even affect you wanting to go to that theme park?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I love Fiesta Texas, and I love the Iron Rattler there. If that was shut down, I would definitely think about changing my dates of when I would go to that park. Because, I mean, if that ride shut down and, say, multiple rides are shut down, it's just going to be a lot busier on all the other rides. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, at least with Disney, Universal, I think even SeaWorld and Busch Gardens, they will let you know when their rides are going to be down for refurbishment. Six Flags is very hit or miss. Sometimes they do, but you also could get to the park and, oh, hey, we're only running one train operations. And, oh, by the way, Iron Rattler is closed after 10 a.m. Some of those things you can't predict, but here's more news as far as Disneyland goes. So there's could be potential 5 attractions closed in May, with Jungle Cruise, which has already been closed since February 17th. Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin closes within the next few days, and so does the monorail. Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters is closing April 13th, and Pirates of the Caribbean is closing on May 4th. So 5 attractions down. I mean, I wouldn't even go to Disneyland at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I said earlier, I guarantee you all the rides that are going to be open, they're just going to be more packed.
In my most recent trip to Disney World, there was Big Thunder Mountain and Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin that were closed at Magic Kingdom, and those 2 rides are giant people eaters that every other ride became longer lines. I mean, that's why we waited an hour to ride Winnie the Pooh. You never need to wait an hour to ride Winnie the Pooh. But it's crazy how 2 rides can totally affect a park. With 5 attractions, good luck. And more positive news, the Buzz Lightyear ride at Magic Kingdom, Space Ranger Spin, will be opening on April 8th. So that'll alleviate some of the crowds.
Yeah, so last week we talked about Six Flags chaperone policy. What's the newest thing with that?
So now it's come to Fiesta Texas as well, and I do believe it is going to be company-wide, but Fiesta Texas came out with a statement saying that there will be a chaperone policy for the weekend of March 28th and 29th, so this previous weekend. They didn't specify if that's going to be the continued thing, so maybe there will be days where it's not enforced versus days that it is going to be enforced because maybe they think it's going to be high traffic days or something. But yes, Six Flags essentially is going to go around and monitor these kids and say, hey, you can't be here unless you're with an adult. But you and I kind of brought up a good topic off air. What if a kid does not want to ride a ride and wants to wait out while his friends or his family rides the ride? Because, your son has done this, and he's perfectly fine. He sits on a bench, plays on his phone, and waits for us to get off the ride. Do you think Fiesta Texas, or any Six Flags park for that matter, would be strict on these rules, or would they maybe let it slide?
It seems like that they're mainly making this rule so for bad kids. So they have this rule, they're going to enforce it when they can. That's what I think.
Yeah, because if a kid is misbehaving, running around the park, starting fights, they can kick him out for being unsupervised. But if some kid is just sitting on a bench waiting for his family to get done with Iron Rattler or whatever ride, they would be able... I think they would let that slide a little bit more because the kid is not being disruptive. He's just waiting for his family.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely can see Six Flags making exceptions for stuff like that.
I mean, you can't help that the kid is afraid to ride a ride or doesn't want to ride a particular ride. You could have someone in your party wait with the kid, but I think you're right in the sense that they have this rule to enforce when they need to, not they're going to be the occupancy chaperone police say, hey, you're not with a parent, you need to leave the park. But where kids can run amok is on a cruise, and this is going to set up part 2 of our series, Let's Go on a Cruise. So on last week's show, we talked about when is the best time to book a cruise, time frames, seasons, what to expect cost-wise. But now we're going to talk about what do you need in order to get on a ship and everything leading up to your cruise. So let's go ahead and get started with the travel documentations, Jesse. You do need a passport, yes, but what are some other necessary things you may need in order to get on a cruise ship?
Yeah, absolutely. So you actually only need a passport if the cruise goes from American port to a other destination. If it's not a closed loop, is what they call it. You can actually, if you're an American citizen, you can actually use your birth certificate and a state ID instead of having to get a passport. But me personally, I highly recommend a passport, especially, God forbid you get left out of port and it would be almost impossible getting home without having to talk to someone so you can easily travel on an airplane. And also, when it comes to lines and all that, once you get off the boat, it's way easier if you have a passport to go through the security lines, because usually the birth certificate line, you're spending almost an hour getting off the ship sometimes.
Yeah, because they have to go through those one at a time and really look over those, whereas a passport, you show it, they stamp it, and then you're on your way. I mean, you and I have gone through these screening lines and cruise ships easily because we have the passports.
Yeah, so like I said, in theory, it's way better getting a passport. You can also get a passport card that will work on the cruise ships. Um, so that is definitely another thing you can do. It works just like a passport does.
By the way, I said they stamp it. They don't actually stamp your passport. They just kind of review it. I kind of miss when they used to, but all the cruises we went on, they don't do that anymore. But how about checking into your cruise? You are a very big, prominent person as far as getting checked in as soon as possible. To me, it's very similar like checking into a flight. You have to do it, and the sooner you do it, the sooner you don't have to worry about it. Is that pretty much the same as on a cruise ship?
Yeah, it is. But usually, typically, you check in. I know with Carnival and Royal Caribbean, it's 30 days before you cruise. MSC, they actually just started on MSC where as soon as you book the cruise, you can check in. So the reason you want to check in is first off, you input all your travel information in there, your actual real name, whatever. You're making sure your dining time, and then the big thing that I check is the boarding time. So if you want to board it early, you need to wake up 30 days exactly. I usually go at midnight, 30 days prior, and select the time that we plan on boarding. Usually it's like a 10:30 or 11 o'clock time because they fill it fast, and you're going to end up getting one of the latest times, which is like 1 or 2 o'clock, and you're the last one on the ship. But I've heard some people, they actually do like it because if they get board at 1 or 1:30, they go pretty much directly right to the room, and they don't have to worry about all the people in the terminal. So just your preference. But me personally, I like to start my vacation as early as possible. What do you think, Jack?
So I'm kind of the opposite. I don't mind boarding late just for that reason that you mentioned, that the room will be done a little bit sooner. And, we kind of talked about this on the last episode where it's just very chaotic when everyone's just sitting around waiting for the room to be open. Everyone goes to Guy's Burgers, or they try to go to get a good seat for the sail away party. The casino's not open yet. So I don't mind getting there a little bit later. And also, let's say if I'm going out of Galveston, it gives me a little bit more time to get everything I need in the morning instead of trying to get to Galveston, leaving at 6 a.m., fighting downtown traffic to get there. So that's just me personally, but what I am on top of is booking dining and excursions as soon as possible. Jesse, are you very much the same way in that regard?
Me personally, honestly, I'm kind of cheap, so I don't do a lot of the dining stuff, but it is definitely recommended. Like, if you plan on going to, like, the hibachi place or the steakhouse and you want a specific day to eat, you definitely want to book that as soon as possible because those time slots will fill up. Because I know certain days, like the Elegant Night, I definitely would not book a steakhouse or anything because the Elegant Night you actually get like the lobster and the prime rib. So I'd rather be in the main dining room at that time because it's free, and so I'm not going to waste that. Same thing goes for excursions. Some of the popular cruise port excursions, they fill up really fast, and once they fill up, you can't book that anymore. It won't even pop up on there. But some of the other stuff, like if you go to Cozumel and you book like Mr. Sancho's or Paradise Beach or any of those other beach resorts, you shouldn't have to worry about it. You won't be able to book those through the cruise line, but you can book them on third party. It's definitely recommended to book it ahead of time because especially during the busy months when there's a bunch of ships there, it will sell out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And with excursions, I've done some, and the cruises that I've gone on, we try to get the excursions booked as soon as possible. Like in the Caribbean, in the Cayman Islands, we did, swimming with stingrays, and I think that booked up pretty quickly. And then Jamaica, we did zip lining through the mountains. And, like you said with Mr. Sancho's, that's something you kind of can plan day of. And there was, my first ever cruise, we went to the Cozumel Palace. We just got a taxi from the port to the palace, and that you could do that day of as well. So booking excursions through the cruise directly is probably the most efficient. And, the sooner you get that done, the easier it is. And of course, it's kind of with any kind of traveling plans. Once you start booking things you want to do, you don't have to worry about it. Like you can just worry about it once you actually get to the port and get to the excursion. So what about other things such as the drink package, Wi-Fi, spa appointments? Do you try to book those in advance as well, Jesse?
Yeah, you definitely want to try to book those in advance. Not that this stuff is like going to sell out. Like they don't sell out on the drink package. I guess potentially they could sell out on the spa appointments, but typically, there's plenty of people, that want to go on the massages, so that you have plenty of different times you can do that. But the Wi-Fi and all that, you definitely want to pre-book it because it's definitely cheaper. Because once you get on the ship, you can still buy all that stuff, but it's going to not be at a discount as if you bought it beforehand.
Because that way they can plan accordingly if you pay for the drink package or the Wi-Fi, and then if you do it afterwards, they're adding to it. It's almost like when you're bringing luggage on a flight, and if you don't pay for your luggage online, you pay the however much it is fee at the airport, which is sometimes can be double what it is online. And speaking of flights, so there's something that you and I have kind of talked about in the past. When you book flights, you always like to arrive at least 1 day early. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So you definitely, when you book a flight, first off, before we book it for 1 day early, we got to find the best flight to go on. Of course, I'm not going to get on talk about the individual airlines and which is the best and all that. But it's definitely recommended to book between 1 and 3 months for domestic flights. I don't know, Jack, you definitely buy the flights for us every time we go in there. What do you feel like is the best time to book them?
I'd say at least within 2 months. Now, that is kind of gambling because we also booked a cruise like 10 months out because it was such a good deal. That's why we went on the Carnival Glory to Celebration Key. We booked that back in February and our cruise was October, but we didn't actually buy the flights until I believe it was late August, early September, because that's when the lower budget flights become more on sale. Now, if you want to plan it all at once and you're comfortable seeing a price, and let's say you're flying to Houston or Florida to go on the cruise, I think it's better to do it all at once. So that way you can get a price point ahead of time. But just know that flights can go down the closer you book to it. If you book something 3-4+ months out, you're likely going to pay the highest possible fee to fly from wherever you're going to these cruise port destinations. And kind of going back to the original point of going a day early, flights are unpredictable, especially with this climate we have right now with the TSAs. Luckily, that's getting better, but how many times have our flights been delayed? Sometimes hours. So having that buffer day is beneficial to going on a cruise. When we went to Florida, we had 2-day buffer because, well, one, we want to go to Universal, but two, that gave us a free day to do whatever we wanted in the city versus, flying in and getting on a cruise immediately. That's just such a risk that you shouldn't have to take.
Another thing that you talk about is, yes, it may be cheaper booking close to it, but if there's an individual time that I need to sell out by 5 a.m. or you don't want to book the early, you want to book a later one, you may be paying more, but you can book that as far as 6 months out. So if you're willing to pay that money and you just want that actual, flight, you don't care about the price, then book it as soon as possible for sure.
Yeah, another thing that we kind of talked about is printing out boarding passes. So that's always a good idea, just to have the boarding passes printed out ready to go. Correct, Jesse?
Yeah, well, so Carnival's is like the only cruise line, which I don't know why, that you have to have the paper boarding pass. Everyone else is all digital now, like MSC, Royal Caribbean is. I honestly do not know about Margaritaville, but NCL is the same way. You don't have to have a physical copy of it. But me personally, it doesn't matter what cruise line it is, I'm printing that pass out because unless you trust technology not to mess up that morning, like your phone dies, you drop it in water, and crap, how you expect to print this stuff out? So I'm very, I definitely have anxiety when it comes to traveling like that. So I print out everything.
It's like printing out a flight ticket, the day of your airport or the day of you flying out. It is a good backup to have. And at least you can just, easily put it in your wallet and then never have to worry about it once you're actually on board. That is really weird that Carnival is the only one that does that. Because, nowadays you can go to most sporting events, concerts, flights, check into a hotel. Everything can be done on your phone. And then you just add the ticket to Apple Wallet or, Android if you have that. But that is a very outdated policy that I think Carnival should consider changing here in the near future. But like you said, that's a good backup to have. It's like if you lose your paper ticket, you have it on your phone, or vice versa. How about travel insurance? So I'm just going to say this real quick. Personally, normally don't buy this. I don't really cancel trips once they're already booked. And I understand things happen, and some people do buy into travel insurance. But what is your opinion on travel insurance?
To be honest, Jack, actually, most of the time you do have travel insurance. You just don't realize it. Because every time we book them for you, we put travel insurance in there with you just in case.
So that's why I have to pay you an extra, couple $100?
That's exactly. But so it's always good to have travel insurance because you don't know what can happen. If you have to get airlifted from a ship because, God forbid something bad happens, it's minimum $10,000 that you're paying for. If you get hurt and you have to go to the medical down there, it's thousands of dollars. It's not like the same prices on land. It's way more expensive on the cruise ship. And plus with travel insurance, if say your flight gets canceled or you get sick the day of, or you never know what could happen, it's really good to have it so you have a backup plan to get reimbursed for that. Also, another idea is like through your credit card. Like my credit card actually offers travel. It's a traveling credit card. It's actually a Carnival credit card, and they offer travel insurance through that credit card. The only thing is you have to book everything on that card. So if you book your flights, you have to pay with that card. If you book the cruise, you have to book everything through that. You can't like get a gift card and like half of it's on this or whatever. It has to be completely booked through that card. So I definitely recommend getting travel insurance, but I know you may like to live on the edge, Jack, but I definitely don't.
I too like to live life dangerously. I mean, when it's not a cruise, so if I'm going to a theme park or I'm going, traveling for, a baseball game or something, I've never booked any kind of travel insurance. Flights, rental car, hotel, they do all offer that option. I guess cruising is a little bit different because if it does come with your fare, that's I'm finding this out for the first time, but then I would say that, if you're already paying for it, then sure, you might as well utilize it. But me personally, with other forms of vacation, I don't do it. But cruises, I'll make the exception for. And also something to make note of is learning the ship's layout beforehand, Jesse. You are definitely more on point with that than I am. I do kind of like exploring the ship and learning new things, but you're very much I want to know where everything is before I even get on the ship. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the easiest and the best way of doing it is just watching YouTube videos. I'm pretty sure I've watched every YouTube video on the new ship that's coming out. Like right now, I've been watching, even though I've been on Carnival Jubilee, we're going on Carnival Jubilee here soon. I've pretty much watched everything about Carnival Jubilee, if there's anything new that comes up. And I actually have learned a lot of stuff about like how the elevators work or how the different dining options, what's free and what's not free. Because there's so many times I go on a cruise ship and people are like, where's this at? They're like, oh, is that included? And I'm like, I always say, oh yeah, this is an included restaurant. And so there's so many people who don't find that out until like day 4, day 5 of a cruise. And when they could have easily known if they just watched a YouTube video and kind of kept up to date with what's going on that ship.
I mean, you are definitely the map when it comes to cruise ships. I remember asking you where's the casino is. Like, oh yeah, it's 5th floor right next to the sports bar, and you're right on the money. And generally speaking, if you are an avid cruiser, especially with Carnival, most layouts are fairly similar. I would say that there's some changes here and there. Just speaking between the Breeze and the Glory, one didn't have a sports bar, but the theater's always on the same deck. The casino for the most part is always on the same deck. It's when you go on a different cruise ship that it could be a little bit different, but for the most part, they are kind of arranged in a way that makes sense. Like I said, for the most part, there's some outliers there that are not. But, learning the ship's layout is good beforehand, just that way you know where your dining is, where the shows are going to be for us casinos, and, where the pools, hot tubs, and there's plenty of bars. And another thing we kind of wanted to talk about was paying for the cruise. So you want to make sure that your cruise is paid off 3 months prior to sailing. Is that correct?
Yeah, so typically that's what the cruise lines do. Once they get all the sailings, they get all the people booked and all that, then they realize the amount of, of course, they need to know the amount of stuff that they need to bring on board. Because if there's got a ship that's half full, they don't need to bring enough items for a full ship. So typically what they do is they want to make sure the whole thing is paid for 3 months prior. So if you book anything within 3 months of a ship, so say, in January you're going to cruise in April, they're going to make you pay for everything at one time. So I definitely highly recommend, like, hey, if you want to go next summer, book it now through Carnival, and Carnival's really good about making it so you can split the payments up. So it's equal number of payments up until 3 months prior to the cruise. So instead of paying, $2,000 or $4,000, whatever it is for your cruise, you break them into small individual payments, which makes it a lot more affordable for the average American.
Yeah, that's whenever we went on the Breeze. That's how I was able to, do that one. And then, of course, they do offer, cheaper sailings as well, like we did with the Glory. And is it possible that if you don't pay it off before the 3-month mark, would they say something to you? Could they potentially cancel your booking?
Yeah, technically in the contract it has to be paid off by then, or they can cancel your booking without refund, because usually technically it's a non-refundable deposit you put down. So it's definitely recommended to have it all paid off by then. If there's anything happens, then you don't have to worry about it.
So what about downloading the cruise ship apps? We actually do have a video about how to work the Carnival Hub app if you want to check that out on our YouTube channel. But utilizing the Carnival, or in your case, you did the MSC as well, the app is very beneficial to us going forward, just because, you could use it even without the Wi-Fi package, correct?
Yeah, so typically all the cruise lines, they all have an app for that individual cruise line. Most of them will only work prior to getting on board. I know the Royal Caribbean app, actually, you can book stuff ahead of time using the app and stuff like that. MSC, you kind of can, but it doesn't unlock everything, and a lot changes on MSC. Carnival, on the other hand, is pretty much pointless until you get on the ship. You can't do anything with it until you get on the ship. But it's definitely recommended to go ahead and download it so you don't have to worry about it. So as soon as you get on ship, you just got to type your folio number in, and then you can log into your account, so it has all your information on there for you, so that whenever you buy something or want to know what's happening on the cruise ship, everything goes through that. As of right now, Carnival, they still have like a pamphlet that shows with everything that goes on the cruise ship. They put it in your cabin the night before, so you know exactly what's happening on the cruise ship. And me personally, I still like to have that pamphlet. Honestly, I think I use it more for a souvenir than actually using it. It's a lot easier just going through the app and finding what you want to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I normally use the app for, is just, see what's happening. And, there is texting feature as well. You pay $5 and everyone in your family can text each other if you don't have the Wi-Fi package. We did kind of mention that last week's show, where you don't necessarily need that if you do have iPhones, because iMessage does work, or if you get the Wi-Fi package. But that's a good option to have if you don't want to pay for the Wi-Fi package. And finally, we want to talk about getting into a group on Facebook. So there are plenty of Facebook groups out there, but what's becoming more and more popular is these cruising Facebook groups that give these little tips and tricks. We have the podcast here, so we can help you book your cruise, but it's also nice to go on these Facebook groups and learn things that you otherwise wouldn't know about these cruise ships.
Yeah, so every cruise, typically someone makes a individual for that individual cruise Facebook page for the individual selling. So if you go on a selling, say a June 1st Carnival selling, I don't know, just whatever ship, Carnival Dream, Jubilee, I don't know, Magic, whatever ship you're going on, they'll have a individual Facebook page that you can meet new people in there. So say you're a solo, you can kind of meet new people because you find people you're hanging out with. It's also really good for a lot of people start posting what the theme nights are, because I don't know what it is, but cruise lines are horrible about releasing what theme nights are going to be on that selling. So a lot of people will go in there and they'll kind of talk about hey, this selling, what the cruise director is, how they are, and all that. It also works really good on board. If you're on board and you're in the Facebook groups and say, oh, wow, I forgot this medication. I'll put in the group chat, hey, does anyone have Tylenol? and then someone will pop up and say, "Hey, I got Tylenol," and then they can bring them to you. So it's definitely good to keep up to date with what's happening on your ship by going on creating a Facebook page. If you don't have if that sailing doesn't exist, you can make your own sailing on Facebook page, but it's definitely highly recommended.
So you brought up a point of theme nights. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. When we went on the Glory, it was October, so there were certain Halloween themes out there, giant pumpkins and, the main foyer. But there was a costume party that night that we had no idea about, I guess was on the Carnival Glory's Facebook page, but I'm not thinking about bringing a costume on a cruise ship without knowing that kind of knowledge of, oh, hey, there's a costume party. You might as well bring it.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people don't know that. It seems like they should email you ahead of time, like, hey, by the way, this selling a month out or whenever after you pay, is like, by the way, this selling is gonna have these theme nights. So plan accordingly. Like if I know like MSC has White Night. They have they've costumes. They have so many different things that you can go on. Carnival's kind of the same way. They have different theme nights. They have White Night. They have an 80s night, so people dress up in 80s characters. But I definitely think that they need to communicate a lot better.
Yeah, because the average person is not going to know these things. I mean, that is what the Facebook groups are for, but without doing extensive research. And if you're just packing for your cruise, you're going to bring shirts, shorts, and whatever else. You're not thinking about bringing a costume or I'm going to dress in an 80s theme because it's going to be 80s night, or even wearing a suit. Because the first time I ever went on a cruise, I didn't know that existed. I was a teenager at the time, but luckily I had a dress shirt because my parents made me take at least one nice shirt for one nice night. Happened to work out. But that's all about prepping for the cruise. Let's talk about packing for the cruise. Jesse, what are some of the essential things you like to bring whenever you go on a cruise?
So absolutely. So first thing is your carry-on bag. Typically, you're going to have multiple luggages. So you can typically have like a suitcase and a carry-on bag. Your carry-on bag, let's talk about that first. The number one things, of course, you definitely want to have your travel documents. A lot of people ends up putting their travel documents in a suitcase and then they give it to the porter when they arrive. Then they have no travel documents. So make sure all your travel documents are in your carry-on bag. Another thing is if you get early, you definitely want your swimsuit, because if you want to go swimming immediately when you get on board or even the first day, because typically your luggage will not get to your room until later that evening, even sometimes after dinner. And if it gets lost, it could be multiple days until they actually receive your luggage. Sunscreen, of course. Any cash. You don't want to leave cash in your main suitcase. And any medical equipment like a CPAP machine or any medication you may need, you definitely want to make sure that's on your carry-on bag.
Yeah, other things that I was thinking about was attire. We kind of hit on that whenever we were talking about theme nights and what to wear, what not to wear. But for me, I like to bring enough clothes to last me, the complete cruise. Now knowing now that there is elegant nights, I like to bring at least one dress shirt and one, I say khakis. That's the minimum I'll go for a theme night. I mean, depending also where I'm coming out of. If we're going out of Galveston, I've packed a whole suit before in a suitcase. But, when we went to Florida, we kind of backpacked it, so I had to be a little creative. And that's something else we can kind of mention is how much do you need to pack? I guess it depends on the length of your cruise. Because we went on the 3-day one, a backpack could be fine. I mean, suitcase would probably be more beneficial, but we made it work. The other, if, it's a home port, we don't have to pay for all the luggage on the plane. How many suitcases are you allowed to bring?
On Carnival's website, at least, it says at least 2 per person, which me personally, I just bring one suitcase and one carry-on. I think that's enough, but I've seen some people, they push the limits. Like, they'll push 3. They really don't say anything, but you got to realize that all this luggage is going to be in your room in this small little cabin. And you have to be able to store the suitcase somewhere even after you empty it out. So a lot of times you can shove it underneath the bed or shove it in a corner. But if you have a family of 4 and everyone brought 3, you're talking, 16 suitcases in your room. It's not going to be practical in there with 16 suitcases.
You can essentially make another bed with all those suitcases.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the other essentials, we kind of mentioned, you know, medical equipment. So, definitely I like to bring Benadryl because of my allergies. I need Dramamine because usually that first day at sea, I don't get my sea legs in. Afterwards, I'm perfectly fine. Pepto, any kind of medication you take, like you mentioned, put in your carry on, Advil. Some other things, I like to bring my own body wash, shampoo, because the ones they do have on the cruise ship, I mean, it's just like generic hotel shampoo, conditioner, body wash. I don't even think they have body wash. I think it's just a soap. So that's better for me to get more clean, especially because let's be honest, the showers there are not the best. Low water pressure, and at least that's a way for me to get clean. Some of the other things, shoes. I'll bring one pair of shoes and usually one pair of flip flops or Crocs. Are you the kind of the same way?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I bring. I usually bring my Crocs, some tennis shoes. Like if you're walking a lot, you definitely want tennis shoes, and then the elegant shoes, for like elegant night, and then water shoes. Because a lot of people are very surprised that a lot of the ports in Mexico and Honduras, even Celebration Key, they're super rocky, and if you don't have water shoes, you can easily get cut, or you can hurt your foot just by walking in the ocean. So it's definitely recommended for that. Another thing that a lot of people, even in the middle of summer, I bring a jacket because a lot of the shows that you go to or a lot of the indoors, it can get really cold on the ship itself. I know we did kind of talk about the theme clothes, so we don't really need to talk too much about that. Another thing is also 2 sets of swimsuits. So I don't know about you, but I always bring two because there's really no way of drying your clothes on the ship. So usually, typically, what I do is one day I'll use one swimsuit, and then when that gets wet, I hang it to dry. Usually, there's like a little, I guess, hook in your bathroom
The wire that goes across the shower.
Yeah, exactly. I let that to dry while the next day I'll use another one. And usually, by the time I'm done with that, the other one's dried. So typically, so I honestly recommend probably three, but two for most part, you can make it work. Um, but yeah, like kind of what you're saying, Jack. Yeah, this all depends on if you want to backpack it or if you want to use suitcase. And then another thing is first aid kits. So we're definitely the first aid kit family because if you have to go to the medical just to get a Band-Aid, you're talking over $100 for like just a Band-Aid. It's ridiculous.
So don't get sick on cruises, people.
Yeah, so it's definitely recommended to have like a small first aid kit that has Band-Aids, burn cream, anything that potentially could happen so you don't have to worry about going to medical. And then we actually had this little kind of like I think it's called a pocket pharmacy from Amazon. It has like non-essential medications, but it has like we put Tylenol in it, seasickness medicine, anti-gas, diarrhea medication, Tums. I know Jack. I know you borrowed Tums from us multiple times. Benadryl, Advil, a lot of like drinking recovery medication, like liquid IV. Those are definitely good. Let's be honest, we drink a lot more when we're on vacation than on land. Well, let's hope. And then we also do Pepto too. So those are some, and then there are specific medications. One thing, like we did talk about Benadryl, is a lot of people don't realize that they eat a lot of new stuff on cruise ships, and that they may not realize that they're allergic to until they try it for the first time. So it's definitely recommended to have Benadryl there just in case something does happen, so you're not having to go to medical and pay hundreds of dollars to give you a small little pill, Benadryl. Because every time you go down there, they give you a full look over. They'll make sure everything's good with you. And that costs a lot more money when easily you just need to take one pill and been good.
Yeah, you eat lobster, but you have high blood pressure, so they're trying to sell you high blood pressure medication, but all you do is eat some lobster and you just need Benadryl. So watch what you eat over there, guys. Of course, this is more talking to our, female audience, but, a lot of girls bring their makeup, hair straightener, maybe sometimes magnet hooks for dresses. Of course, you need to bring deodorant. If you want to shave on the ship, you can bring shaving cream. I think a razor has to go in your check bag, if I'm not mistaken. It's kind of like a flight.
No, honestly, no, it's not. A lot of people think that, and that actually goes on to all the stuff. You don't have to get travel size for any of this stuff as long as it's in your suitcase. because you can get a big bottle of shampoo, or you can get a big thing of toothpaste, mouthwash, whatever it is, because a cruise is not a flight, so they really don't care what size it is. A lot of people show up with travel size, but a travel size for a 7-day cruise really isn't going to last you for a 7-day cruise. But like sunscreen too, a lot of people, and then when you forget to put the sunscreen on, you definitely want after sun care too. I know my wife always got this little spray that you spray on yourself after you've been in the sun, so you don't like burn as easy. Of course, if you wear glasses or contacts, make sure you bring contact solutions and glasses. For your clothes, get the wrinkle release spray, because you can't really iron your clothes on the ship, so it's definitely good to have the wrinkle release, especially if you're elegant, so you don't look like you're homeless in the main dining room.
And you don't have to wear your pajama pants in public into the fancy night, which we've seen before. So there is no rules for fancy night. You can essentially do whatever you want. One of the things I didn't realize when I went on my first cruise is that it's good to bring a reusable bottle of water. I had a coffee cup, and I dumped it out, and I just end up using that as my refillable, because you can get the water, the tea, the lemonade, anything for free. You can just fill it up and bring it back to your room, because there is no bottles of water in your room. Well, there is, but you charge you extra, and that's kind of goes on with saying bringing drinks as well. You can bring a case of a 12-pack of soda. I believe you can bring bottles as well. You can't bring bottles of soda.
No, you can't bring bottles of soda. You can only bring cans, 12-pack of cans per person, and you can bring canned water, but you can't bring bottles, because there's too many people that were taking the cap off and then filling up with like vodka or something and then putting it back on the bottle. So they went away with the bottle. Everyone ruins it for everybody.
I know, we got to use mouthwash now, and that's even being cracked down on now too. But yeah, having that reusable water bottle or just reusable cup is very beneficial, especially when you're trying to just have water at night. You can just go fill it up, get plenty of ice.
Especially if you don't have the drink package, because if you have a drink package, at least for Carnival and MSC, you can just get bottles of water. They give it to you with the drink package. And I know in NCL, for some reason, they do not include bottled water in the drink package, which is kind of weird, but maybe that's something else that they're going to change. But it's definitely recommended to get that, especially when you get off the ship on an excursion. It's really good to have that, just so you fill it up with, water, or hey, if you want a margarita, fill it up and take it off the ship too. Whatever you want to, it's good to have that option. Speaking of getting off the ship, it's also really good to have like a small little collapsible beach bag, or I think you, Jack, you normally have like a little backpack, like a drawstring backpack. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my normal carry-on that I bring to my theme parks or just in the cruise or in general, just so I can have the little essentials and I don't have to put everything in a bunch of pockets. Yeah,
then of course you definitely want to bring your sun hat or just regular ball cap, some sunglasses, of course. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of these ports are more south of where you normally stay, so you're definitely get closer to the sun, which means you're definitely get sunburned a lot easier. So it's definitely good to be ready for that. Of course, a cruise lanyard. I know, like Disney, you can actually get like a little wrist, and I know MSC you can get a wristband too, so you could just touch it. But it's definitely good to have a cruise lanyard for your cruise, your sell and sign card. So any payments you make or anything, it's just right there. Some people don't like it. I know my wife, she wears one on her wrist. It's like a wrist one. But me personally, I like the lanyard myself. What do you think, Jack?
Well, it's easier for you to take off and put in the slot machines, of course. Can't put it on your wrist. No, I like the lanyard as well, and it's like wearing a necklace, and it's always on you at all times, and it's very easy to forget those. At least it's on the lanyard around your neck, then it's a little bit more in your possession where you don't lose it as easily. So kind of our last couple things you need to bring: non-surge power strips, in case you need to plug in multiple things. I personally can't go on any cruise without headphones, especially when you just want to detox, listen to music, and sit on the deck. A book to read, just some entertainment, some optional stuff, snorkel gear if you have an excursion, or you're going to go to a beach and swim. That could be a good thing to bring. Trash bag for wet clothes. And of course, you kind of mentioned this earlier, bring cash. Having at least small bills, tip a bartender tip, the wait staff when you eat, and tip the house attendants. Those are just, nice gestures. Yes, your gratuity is already included in your expenses, but it's just nice to give that little bit of money. And is there anything else that you would think that we would need just to bring on this cruise?
Yeah, one thing that actually we brought last time, which was really helpful, was actually like board games. It's fun, especially when you're with a group of people. You have tons of people. It's really good to bring like different games. Like we played Phase 10. We just played Yahtzee last cruise. We played Skip-Bo. Those are some of the top ones. I know when we were in MSC, I still don't know what it was, but there's a bunch of Asians that were on the MSC, and they were playing this domino game. And I don't know if you've ever seen them play it, but it's weird. It looked like they were having fun playing. I kind of wish I knew how to play it, but they were having so much fun. Every single night you go through the buffet area, and they were sitting there, they're playing dominoes, they're having the best life.
I think that's Pai Gow, because I think that there is a game that you can play at casinos where, it's dice and dominoes. So
yeah.
I think that's Pai Gow. So yeah, we'll do a live stream of us playing Pai Gow, learning it as well. But that'll do it for this week's episode of the Lido Loop. As always, you can follow us on YouTube, and you can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and wherever you get your podcasts. As always, I'm Jack, that's Jesse, and we will see you
on the Lido deck
or on NCL's private island enjoying the drink package.
Thank you for watching this episode of Lido Loop. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you're notified every time we post more content.